Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Diablo 3 podcast. We are online at diablo8gamers.com. I'm your host, Flux, and joined by a ringing telephone. Joined tonight by a longtime, not been on the show forever, guest, AdAstra.
Hello.
And you can explain your failure to appear in shortly, like a judge from the bench. And the least pasty Diablo 3 streamer I know of, Katniss, a.k.a. Leviathan.
What's up, guys?
You actually are kind of pasty. I mean, it's an occupational hazard of being a streamer.
It's
Even though you have dark skin tone, you're still kind of pasty. It's amazing how that works.
it's true. I would say compared to those who have similar skin tones, I'm probably lighter than they are due to the fluorescence.
And I'm in Oregon, so pasty is just, you can't help it up here. So
Right? You might as well be a streamer at that point.
yeah, except that would require me to play video games. So we are got a lot of topics tonight. Probably gonna run like we're not gonna. It's not the Sanctuary Sweatshop, right, Katniss? We're not gonna go 2.5 hours, but we have a few things to cover. Some recent play stuff, some Greater Rift issues. I wanna rhapsodize about Natalya's and bitch about the UE set. A little bit of power creep stuff on things. Visual elements of some skills. Damage numbers are a pain in the ass. You can't read them anymore. There's too many. My idea for a new EP and Greater Rift thing. Let's see what else. And Katniss and I will have our 17th version of our argument about how Blizzard should exercise more disclosure on people who get banned or punished for crimes or not.
Oh, it's gonna be fun.
And then some other various stuff. It'll take me too long to tell me all the stuff on the show. I could just start doing the show in the meantime. So you haven't been on here forever, AdAstra. Tell us what you've been doing and where you've come from and how long. When were you last on the show and what have you been doing since? And what's your big topic of the day?
Oh my gosh, if I had one big topic, it would be seasons back to back. And I guess I would love to push the idea, the concept, get it out there that maybe there should be some in-between season things, like perhaps a chance to play with all of your gear and all of your skills collectively. They kind of hammer you with like season 1, season 2, season 3 with a week break to sort all your gear and get back in it. So I'd like to see that change.
That was a very brief bio. So when was you last on the podcast?
Oh.
Like a year ago?
Well, yeah, I guess it's been a while. We actually, it didn't get off the ground. We started it and then I don't know what came up, but that podcast didn't get aired.
I have no memory of this. It was long ago. And so in the meantime, you've been taking selfies for your Skype avatar?
Man, I've played endlessly. I've even been playing the PTR. But season 2, I was like, that's it. I'm gonna be the number one player, and I played constantly. I was Paragon 800 and trying to get my monk like to the top. I was watching Quinn a lot, he's constantly streaming, and he's got this insane support system. And I was like, he's got a great concept, but I never made it as far as I wanted to, and I left that season frustrated. But lo and behold, we were back in another season a week later.
The whole 7-week season 2 thing was a little surprising, but we've kind of covered that in the past.
I know.
So now this one they've told us it's 4 months,
Right.
and it's going to end a day after they announce the expansion pack at Gamescom. Is that correct, Katniss?
That's exactly right. Yes, things to look forward
That's what
to.
the timing is, the whole 4 months thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's
And Wyatt told you that off the air when he was on your podcast a few months ago, right?
I'm not at liberty
Big secrets?
to discuss it. No, I'm just kidding. He told us.
And then he pulled his reptile skin mask off like the producer at the end of the Weird Al video.
See, now you're making pop culture references. I'm lost.
Yeah, and that just right over your head. I'm sorry. So, what have you been up to lately, Katniss? You play a lot. You were a Crusader previously. You were a really highly ranked Crusader in season 1 and season 2. And whenever I see you on this season, you're a barbarian and occasionally a demon hunter.
Yeah, really made.
Why have you forsaken the noble order?
They didn't get anything new, really. I mean, I guess it's not fair to say that. They did get Roland's reworked, and it's an exciting change. It makes that set much more viable, much more competitive. But there were just too many goodies coming to the other classes. And truth be told, I was a Barb for much longer than I was a Crusader. I only just passed in hours played my Barb on Crusader last season. So that was a lot of time spent on the Crusader for sure. But Barb was the first love, and when they got the rework and then the new set as well, it just seemed like a good time to switch back over. So that's been.
And it was
Sorry, go ahead.
and it was a good timing because there's very few barbarians now, so you're one of the very few guys who can tell us about how the whole spin to win thing works.
It makes me really frustrated because now I'm
You're
getting.
really unique, you know. I don't see any other barbarians on my playlist
Oh my
lately.
God. But see, now I get lumped in with all the like spin to win herder, like this is the popular class this season. And I will tell you right now, and you can check the record, I did zero spinning to winning back in the day. Never touched that build. I was all about like the Hoda, Rend, all sorts of that good stuff back in vanilla. So never spun to one.
And now you're
So
doing
the
the
first
same
time it was
thing.
OP, you didn't play it, but the second time it was OP, you got right in on there. You're in the ground
I
floor.
mean, I basically was just like, crap, I missed out. I got to do it this time.
So you've been monking mostly at AdAstra? Have you done any spin to win?
I kind of got burnt out on the monk after the season 2 thing, and then I went right into actually. I've been doing a lot of Crusader, and I've been doing the Roland set, and I've been working on my Barbarian. So I'm loving it. I love the Roland set. I'm kind of into it, and the Barb is great. I feel like Barbs were punished for so long for being the most popular thing when Diablo 3 started, and then they just were like, we're just going to punish this entire class. We're going
Sit
to
in your
give them
corner.
one set.
There's been these like debates about how like people are like, oh, the Demon Hunter's always overpowered. It's not fair. And it's like Demon Hunter was horrible for Diablo 3, you know.
Dude,
And there was like very briefly at the start, like Nether Tentacles was sort of bugged and really powerful for like a week and a half.
hmm
And then they fixed the bug, and then they just became, it was only kind of useful because initially Inferno was so instant death that being able to use Smokescreen was the only way to stay alive at all. But then we had like 18 months of the Barb being the most powerful class in the game, and it's only since like the Marauder 6 set came out that Demon Hunters became even powerful again.
it's true.
But of course the whole thing in the game is that it's at the highest level of Greater Rifts now. It's all about being a glass cannon because you'll pretty much die from one shot almost anyway. When you're up in people up in Greater Rift 65 and 68 and 69 and stuff in softcore.
Yeah, you can't
So
make
things
one
somehow
mistake. You can't make a single mistake when you're up that high, and you've got people there that are just there to take care of you while you kill stuff. So
hmm
Yeah, I posted a video this morning of just of the brand new one of the guys getting Greater Rift 69, and the whole entire thing it's just the Witch Doctor just permafears stuff. The Crusader runs around and does this little pony chain thing and drags dudes in,
hmm
and there's two Demon Hunters that just endlessly shoot lightning ball with their Crider shots using the AoE set.
Well, it's a demon hunter and a wizard, right?
Now the one this morning I posted was two Demon Hunters doing the exact same thing.
Oh, right.
And it's just all they do is just ball lightning endlessly with like every 5 seconds they'll do one multi shot to keep their their focus restraint buffs up.
Right.
Right.
And it's like the most boring playstyle ever, but of course it's very effective, and it's just the permanent CC from the Witch Doctor.
Well, that's obviously a thing that, when they talk about, hey, we really don't like permanent CC, you're looking at the main example of why it needs to be a thing that's eradicated. When you basically boil the 4-player meta down to it having to be absolutely these two support classes for anyone else to survive, even, being breathed on past Greater Rift 60 or whatever, that seems to be problematic because obviously you want players to care about defense and care about healing and things like that. It's part of the game. But like AdAstra just pointed out, like, you can't make a mistake at those levels. It gets to the point where the damage output is just too great. So I'm looking forward to when they remove the perma-CC effects and actually tone down monster damage and then see like, okay, do players actually use esoteric alteration? Are they combining it with, taking actual defense on gear and things like that? Like how many more glass cannon builds will there still be, or is it just going to be more of the same?
It just seems like ultimately the highest level will be people who can glass cannon and just obviously in softcore you can just do 100 rifts until you happen to just not get hit at all that entire rift, and that's the one time that you set the record. And obviously that's a little different in hardcore, but
hmm
then again everything's different in hardcore.
It's true. You have
What's
to be a
funny
little
is,
bit.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say because when you started out, I followed you a lot on this website, and you were always either a DH or a monk, and you were like just dying constantly because you were just hardcore. So, and now you've switched. You don't play those classes. Well, you still no, you're doing DH now, aren't you?
I've pretty much done only. Actually, I still think I have more. Like Katniss said earlier, just passing your most played character. I think I still have the most played of a monk, because I did mostly monk in D3 vanilla.
Huh. That's so weird too. I always think of you
But
as
I've
more
done
of a
almost
DH.
entirely Demon Hunter and Reaper of Souls.
Yeah.
I was gonna do a Witch Doctor in season 2, but then like a week into it, they said, "Hey, the season's gonna end pretty soon." I'm like, well, "What's the point in that?"
Yeah.
And then of course now we know that the other three classes are getting new sets next season.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll get a new Witch Doctor set, and hopefully they'll fix the most useless set in the game is the Helltooth set now.
Right.
Right.
Okay, okay. Obviously, Thrones of the Invoker is more useless, but I mean, in terms of the actual class sets.
Hey,
So
you
it
can
seems
get
kind
a
of pointless
soul
to
out
get
of
into
those
Witch Doctor now
sets.
when they're going to totally buff it next season, but who knows?
Right. And that was kind of one of the reasons why I wanted to not do as much Crusader this time around too, because if it's going to get an update for sure next time around, or 2.3 at least, then it seems like a good time to hop back into it. I actually wanted to ask AdAstra, are you using Shield Bash or Sweep Attack in your use of the roll-in set?
I'm using this Shield Bash because I haven't found the weapon that grants your resource for using Sweep Attack. So there's no point in using it yet.
Right.
There's like, I forget what it's called, but there's like basically a weapon that's like the Kreider shot for
So Golden
Crusaders.
Flints.
Yeah, I forget what it's called. But anyway, yeah, I've been using Shield Bash. I think what Blizzard is doing, I see them like they keep removing people's ability to perma anything, and I think what they really want is to see us get away from these glass cannon builds and use more defensive armor. They want to see us mix it up more. I mean, they keep giving us legendary gems that are defensive, both last season and this season. And they're even
Iceblink has defensive properties. It's an offensive gem, but
yeah, so
it slows everything down much more so. So it's kind of a combination defensive offensive gem.
Yeah.
the problem I have with all that is, they're kind of creating a homogenous situation where every class has the death save passive, and every class is going to have to wear like this. I kind of like that the Witch Doctor can fear constantly. I mean, I think it's a cool thing. I even the monk, like they changed the timer so that you couldn't do a permanent serenity. And I actually, if you ever got the build to the point where you had permanent serenity, you realize that it was kind of flawed. It was like even if you had it overlapping, you could still die.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't so godly. So Quinn, who's always he's always streaming, and he's the best monk like 3 seasons in a row almost. I don't know, this season he's like definitely in the top 10. But I mean,
just like you, right?
yeah, right. I'm like nowhere in existence right now, but that guy, he had it overlapping, and he had 1,000 paragons. So I mean, I don't know. I hate when they keep nerfing these things. I feel like they should let some of it go.
Well,
so you're fine with builds that allow you to be permanently immune to death?
Not permanently immune, but like being able to like have some strengths that like last longer. I mean, I just don't want to see this homogenous thing where everybody's wearing 50% defensive armor, 50% offensive armor, and they move in.
Okay, tell him why he's wrong, Katniss.
So there's something to be said for wanting to keep the fantasy, right? Like, the witch doctors, they're built in that they wear these scary voodoo masks, and obviously there should be fear from the monsters when they see
and very little else.
And right. And there should be fear from the monsters when they see something that's actually like uglier than they are. Like, holy crap, that scares me. So it gets to the core of that fantasy, right? But I think it can only go so far when it becomes like game breaking, and maybe it's on the cusp of game breaking right now. Or if it encourages a play style or a group composition that is eventually not considered to be the aims of the game, essentially what it does is it eradicates the need for defense. And not having, because when you look at Diablo, it's like a 3-part equation. There's the damage output, there's the damage mitigation, and then there's the healing, which kind of ties in. And actually both the two things I just mentioned kind of tie into the healing equation, part of the equation.
And the wardrobe. Don't forget the wardrobe.
Oh, of course, cosmetics and transmog.
That's the 4th pillar of Diablo 3. Looking hella sexy.
So, I don't even know where I was going with that anymore. Now I'm just thinking about witch doctors. So when you boil it down, though, I think fear should definitely still be a part of the witch doctor's kit. Like, that is, akin to them as the class and what they represent. But it can't go so far that it essentially takes away other parts of the stuff that you need to or should be caring about in terms of building your character fully.
But they're going to punish the witch doctor now, just like they did the Barb for being spin to win, just like they did the monk for being perma-serenity, even though that didn't work 100%. They're going to punish the witch doctor, and then the witch doctor build that everyone has been working on and trying to perfect, basically they're going to have to toss it and start over because the bill will be useless. And that's what I find to be frustrating too, is completely we're going to strip you down. We're going to punish you for being on top. And I wish and I hope that they don't react that way again. But they probably will.
I can commiserate with that a little bit, but I think one thing that, is still that X factor, the unknown, is they are getting a new set, like Flux just mentioned, coming up soon. So it could be that their meta is about to be thrown into the air in the first place anyway.
You're right.
So maybe this is the perfect time, kind of, seize the opportunity to make that change, but also give them a gift. And here's this newly designed set that should really give your class a boost. And if they do it right, maybe it'll actually replace, wanting to play support all the time, because now the witch doctors will have something besides like dagger of darts as their one offensive thing that they can do.
That's a good point. It's true. I mean, that they did that for Monk too. They gave us another set this season. So it was like, we'll punish you on this side, but at least they gave us another set.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like super powerful.
Yeah, so. It's really working. So who can really complain about that?
Probably one of us could if we need to.
I'll work some complaints up.
We are broadcast professionals. We can always find something to complain about.
Amen.
Yeah,
So speaking of other cool sets, you've been playing some Demon Hunter, Katniss. You've been using Natalya's. I'm totally in love with Natalya's 6-piece set. That's like all I've been playing the last 2 weeks or so. And you've been doing a little bit of, speaking of spin to win, right?
Yeah.
Have you been spinning to winning with your Natalya's or doing something else with your Demon Hunter?
So when I saw the email you sent out, I was kind of hoping I'd be on the show, because I was like, oh man, we're gonna butt heads on this. I put out a flurry of tweets this morning, like denouncing the Nat set. I hate it. I absolutely hate the playstyle. I tried it for the first time this morning. I got everything together, got my Balefire caster, had all my CDR in where it needed to be, and the Crashing Rainbow, all the pieces, and went through, and I was just like, this doesn't feel like the Demon Hunter to me. Like, I'm just spinning here in this little like section, and then I throw out this Crashing Beast thing all the time. But like, I'm not shooting arrows really. Like, I don't know. It didn't feel right. And when I had just spent so much time in Unhallowed Essence gearing up to get the Nat set, I was enjoying the hell out of my UE time. So I actually just went right back to it.
Okay, I had a thing later on where we were going to talk about the whole how Blizzard doesn't name and shame people who have been exploiting. And I was going to say that you've never been so wrong, but I get to say that now. I get to jump ahead on Katniss. You have never been so wrong.
Yes.
Wait, are you playing hardcore, by the way? I'm not sure who's playing hardcore here. Okay.
Yeah, he does. We both do hardcore only.
Okay.
That's why our voices are louder on the podcast. We have a couple of guys in the clan, in the hardcore, the INC hardcore clan, who went softcore this season just for a change.
Mugs.
And when they start talking in chat, I can't really hear them anymore. Like their word, like it's sort of a faint whispering, like a ghost behind a wall.
Mm.
Because their words have no weight anymore. Now they can die whenever they want to. But I actually don't totally disagree with you if you were doing the fire version of the spin to win, with the whole knockback, Shadow Beast, whatever it's called thing, which is the most powerful one. That's the one people have been doing like GR60 with, but it's a total pain in the ass to use. It actually sucks until like GR45 from what I've seen. I've used it in the low 40s, and it's just really annoying. It's really hard to manage the resource. You need RCR on CRC. Which one is it? RCR.
CDR?
Reduced resource cost reduction. RCR.
RCR?
I was afraid if it's cost resource reduction or resource cost reduction, whatever. But it's really hard to spin constantly and to keep your cooldowns going quickly. The one that I find really awesome is the physical version. And where the physical is called Dark Cloud, and that gives you kind of an auto-targeting Rain of Vengeance that lasts for, I think it's 8 seconds, and it hits whatever you're near.
Mm-hmm.
It just hits the full screen. And you do that with, usually you use lightning, so you get the fast spin. The way I'm doing it is I have a Gnat's crossbow and I have a Calamity, which gives you the proc that 20% extra damage to all targets hit.
Nice.
And you just dual wield with that, and it's a whole different. The difference on the paradigm in the gameplay is you don't use a quiver anymore, so you can do interesting stuff with dual wielding. And I wish there were more interesting one-handed quivers. The other really cool version is you use the 2 Dinetta's quivers, and you can just vault infinitely. And because it turns vault into a hatred spinner, that will proc your hatred generator instead of having to use another skill as well. So it's like it's helping to proc that. You can use it with the focus and restraint. But I really just enjoy the non-stopness of it. The whole thing, you ease a little bit of the non-stopness, except I think it's too easy to use, and I don't like the way the set's designed. Marauders was super powerful, but even once they fixed it in recent patches, it was very stop and go. You'd run to a place, you'd drop a sentry or two, you'd bomb things, and then you'd move on. And it was so resource intensive that it was, unless you got a lot of health orbs, you were always having to kind of moderate your output. And the way it worked at the higher levels is you would use focus and restraint, and you would just sort of go, triple shot is the, what is it called? Focus, I believe, is the, is the form of evasive
fire, yep.
Yeah, the form of evasive fire that everyone uses that gives you 7 hatred every shot. And it's instant triple. You just go, click, right click, left click, right click, left click. Assuming your spender, your cluster bomb was on the right. And that was just sort of a never-ending thing, trying to keep your focus and restraint going, and also keep your Taegooks going last season. But that was kind of fun, but it was very stop and go. And what I really like about the Natalyas is that it's just all spinning. You can pass through any enemy. It feels much more robust and safer. You're wearing a Taegooks usually, and you've got 60 stacks of that or something. You're running around with like 25, 30 million toughness, which I realize is like nothing compared to like what's your barbarian have now, Katniss? Like 80 million?
When I'm fully buffed out, it's like 140 million toughness.
Yeah, there you go. So 30 is a lot for a Demon Hunter at this point. But I mean, I'm doing T6 riffs with the Natalya's physical in 2 to 3 minutes, just routinely, which isn't as fast as a spin to win Barb, but it's pretty damn fast for a Demon Hunter.
Sure.
And you just fly through stuff, and it's just so fun to keep going. And you just sort of what the whole tricky part is the controls. Do you have Demon Hunter Pinky today, Katniss?
Maybe,
as we call it. I mean, it's actually physically damaging to your hand. It's almost like the old days of the critical mass wizards, where you're left. Generally, what people do with it is you put strafe on the right click, and you have you're basically have your pinky on shift full time, because the way that the build works to keep the Rain of Vengeance cooldown going is you constantly strafe, and every half second or so you left click or whichever button you have it on to shoot your your generator. Sorry. So you alternate generators and strafe, and that keeps your cooldowns for like 3 or 4 seconds each, depending on how much CDR stuff you have for your Rain of Vengeance. But just you spend 15 minutes with holding the shift click down with your left pinky finger, basically, and doing, your other fingers are dancing around constantly. When I was playing this build a whole bunch like 2 weeks ago, when I was first really getting it down, I had to map the Alt key to the same thing as the Shift key for a while, so I could use my thumb instead of my pinky, because I was getting like this hooked hand, like I was going to star in a Daniel Defoe movie and win an Oscar for not being able to move my body. I mean, it actually like paralyzes you. And there are, the other workaround is what people used to do with the Tempest Rush build with the Monk, where you put it on your number lock key, basically.
I'm all about that.
I'm not a fan.
Which you can do, but you do have to stop shifting it occasionally. I mean, you don't have to, but it does help the way your controls. And the current build that I'm also doing was where I'm doing, when I gear to do D6, I gear down for that, and I put on faster movement stuff, and I switch to Vault instead of Smokescreen. And for some reason, when you click the Vault button while you're holding the shift, it doesn't work like 2/3 of the time. You have to click Vault like 3 or 4 times. Or if you let go of the shift key, then Vault work every single time you try it. So it's like this. That's why it's kind of inconvenient to use the number lock thing if you're trying to go for a speed run, as opposed to what you were trying, Katniss, where you're going the full-on fire build, which is like really complicated to do and really hard to aim. You have to sort of juggle everything back nonstop, and you've got to keep spinning, and you've got to keep your resource going. And you tend to run a resource unless you have a lot of resource cost reduction stuff, especially if you're doing multiplayer. You don't have your Templar anymore. Then you have to do like what I've had to learn to do. I even get that now with the physical build, where I have to do double. You have to do 2 hatred generators and then go back to spinning, just because you run out of resource otherwise.
Interesting.
I was doing that the first time I was doing like a GR 43 or 44, I think it was, a few weeks, last weekend probably. Have I been soliloquizing here long enough about the Nat set? Okay, almost done. I got to the end of a really good riff. The first time I think I was on a 43. This is hardcore, so it's kind of scary. And got to the boss, and it was God, what's his name? The teleporting guy with the 2 big swords.
It's the
Perdition,
fake
not
Rakanov.
Perdition.
I don't know what his name is.
Yeah, it's Rakanov. I forget his name. It is
I think
Perdition,
it's
right?
Perdition, yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always forget. I'm confusing him with the giant 4-legged, the
Yeah,
He's the
master
guy
Friendly.
from Act 4. He's the dude that when you went through that first area.
Yeah. I mean, it's the one that you go through, the first area of Act 4, the boss with the teleporting thing. And I got to him, and suddenly I'm completely out of hatred halfway through the fight. I'm like, I can't move without hatred. I need movement to spin my little self out of the way of his little blades that he throws, and then the teleport. And he was almost one-shotting me with every one of the teleports if I didn't time my smoke screen right. And I'm like, I can't move. I'm out of hatred, and I'm like panicking now. I'm running like a half a screen
Run,
away, trying to like
Forrest,
get some hatred
run.
back. But yeah, I had not had the problem the whole rift because I was getting so many health globes, you know. And you get to the boss, and suddenly you don't have any health globes, and you have no hatred. It's like this was a bad time to realize this build had one major problem in it.
Yeah, but that's
But once you get used to it, you just kind of double shoot between stuff, and it's sort of a timing thing. But anyway, Katniss, I would suggest that you try the physical for a while, and that's what I really enjoy. And the fire is more of a specialized thing for like higher grifts. It's not so much. It's also horrible with somebody else because you're making all the monsters bounce around
Yeah.
constantly. But anyway, have you done spin to win with a Natalya set yet, AdAstra, and why not?
no, because I've been so focused on I was so focused on Monk and 2, and now I've been really focused on Barb's and the Crusader.
So you are spinning to win. You're just in a different way.
But let me ask you on with your Demon Hunter and these new sets, can you incorporate Mark for Death into your setup?
Well, I'm using Calamity on my offhand.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually better than March for Death. It gives you the March for Death proc that's more effective than any of the actual March for Death.
Well,
itself.
actually, but Mortal Enemy is a great one if you're starving for hatred.
On the PTR, this build, I didn't have a Calamity. I was using Mark for Death. At that point, people hadn't realized how effective it was to alternate between Strafe and a Generator, which gives you much faster CDR than anything else. So that kind of takes away your extra hotkey. People were doing it with just Strafe and not even using a Spender initially. Well, they changed it on the PTR many times. Initially, you could do the whole cooldown in like 3 seconds just with Strafe. And they kept tweaking how the cooldown worked in terms of your Spender and your Generator and which skills worked better and didn't work better. And the way it's worked out now, I don't know if anyone's doing much. I guess you could do Mark for Death, but you kind of don't have a spare skill. I mean, with the UE set, you actually kind of have a spare skill set. You've only got 5 you really need. Katniss might disagree with this, but that's my
With
my
the UE
experience
set,
anyway.
are you starving for hatred, or is everything hunky dory?
You're not serving for anything. with
Do
the
I
UE
get to
set.
defend Unhallowed Essence now? Because you've been
Yeah.
going.
Tell him why it's good, and then I'll tell
Oh
him why
my
I think
god.
it sucks.
Okay.
I mean, it's certainly effective, but I haven't said why it sucks yet. But go ahead and tell us why you like. So you never played a Demon Hunter before, and you're enjoying the UE set. Why does it make you happy?
All right. So all right. First, let's put everything in perspective. So I would say that you have 3 sets for the Demon Hunter outright. You have Marauders, you have Unhallowed Essence, you have Nats. It's almost like looking at a stoplight, right? Like Marauders, like you're saying, very stop and go. So I'd almost call it the red light build. Unhallowed Essence, I'd say it's kind of yellow because you can usually just go through, you multi-shot, things are going to die, you keep moving, get to a pack, you kind of slow down a little bit. And then obviously with the net set, tons of mobility, you're just go, 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 like you said, pushing things back with the fire build. Don't know much about the physical build, but it intrigues me. And the reason why I like Unhallowed is because it's that middle ground. It's right between the two. And I think that it operates really well. It's not, I hate when people say builds are simplistic because they're as simple as you want to make them to be. You can actually complicate the hell out of a build and play it to its 9th degree. It's like do perfect output with it. And it actually takes a lot of concentration and skill to pull it off. So I want to say that with Unhallowed Essence, there's that very synergistic between hatred and discipline interplay where when you get into the shit, when you get into trouble, you're going to have to use some discipline to get out of it. But as you're doing that, you're also taking away your offensive ability to get rid of the threat. And so you have to kind of make decisions at some point to say, okay, I gave myself enough safety, but now I actually need to start doing damage. I have to like find a way to actually take this pack down because I can't keep running away. So it actually forces you to make like tough choices in terms of, all right, am I going to sit here? How dangerous is it for me, especially in hardcore? Have I created enough distance? So I think there's a lot there actually with that set. I don't think it's so simple as like you just multi-shot and you win.
Well, it's a well-designed set. I mean, the way it works. I did a post about this a couple of weeks ago, and I mean, there's basically 2 points to it. You know, the 4-piece bonus gives you a bonus for not being close to things, and you want to have the 6-piece bonus gives you damage bonus for alternating between your generator and your spender, and it really synergizes beautifully with focus and restraint. So, but I mean, the whole point of it, and Zay's obviously works really well with it also, because that's the 4-piece bonus. You're kind of staying far away from things. But I mean, basically, the strategy of using the Unhallowed Essence set is to stand at the edge of the screen and alternate your left clicks and right clicks. and you essentially get infinite discipline, and you have almost no hatred issues because you're having to use left click a lot to keep your discipline up. And if you just stay far away from things, you get extra damage. So I mean, it all synergizes nicely. I mean, the way it's put together. But my complaint about it is that it's just there's not enough to do with it. You don't. Marauders is not a perfect build or by any means, but you have to place your sentries properly. You have to manage the sentries. There's a cooldown those. You can't cheat the cooldown to 1 second with gear, that kind of thing. And UE set, the whole point is just standing at the edge of the screen and alternating your left clicks and right clicks. And that seems like it's a viable build. I mean, I played it a little bit myself and kind of got bored with it, but that it seems like it's too rewarding in terms of what it's demanding of the player, of the strategy, and how powerful it is. 1,600% damage.
I don't have a
output or
problem with
something, right?
rewarding. Well, I don't know why you have a problem with rewarding. What's bad about rewarding?
Rewarding is fine, but I think there should be some effort in. That's why I like Natalya so much now because it's hard to use. I mean, you have to actually do it properly, and you paralyze your left
Anything,
thinking
but
in the
anything
process.
is hard to use. Take it up to its maximum. Like push Unhallowed Essence into a high greater riff, and then come back and let's have this conversation again. Like it's not that.
Well, I posted a video this morning of two guys doing 69. All they did was stand in
But
one
dude,
place
come
and
on,
shoot lightning bolts
that's
for
in a 4-player
nonstop.
group where everything is immobilized for like zero. Like there's nothing to do.
True.
Literally nothing to do. But
Yeah,
if you're
solo
going
it.
so.
Well, they had to shoot a multi-shot every 5 seconds to keep their buffs up, man. I mean, don't say nothing.
In solo play, it is so much more complex than that. I feel like you're against when you put a timer in there, that means a whole lot more in terms of okay, yeah, you want to keep at the edge of your screen, but at some point you have to push forward into that greater rift in order to make the time. Like if you're not going to make the time, you have to put yourself into a situation where you're going to pull more monsters than you might be comfortable with. Then you're going to actually, here's something coming on my left, here's something coming on my right. I'm going to get fluxed and get trapped in the middle here. But I don't know. I feel like you're making it too simplistic, and then you're like glorifying Nats. Like they're both good. In fact, that
No, Blizzard made it. Blizzard's the one who made it too simplistic. It wasn't me.
I don't know.
Whose fault
But
was it, really?
I think it was John
Well,
Yang's
there it
fault
is.
personally, but we're not going to go there.
Agree to disagree.
The difficulty of that I was actually texting about UEs early in the season, and it felt really squishy to me. And my first Demon Hunter of the season was using UEs and died because of that. Compared to Marauders, where you have your 2-piece Marauders bonus and you have all these little pets out for tanks, and you're dropping cold sentries nonstop. Of course, what's sort of become the UE set since then is people generally use it with cold sentry because it gives you a way to get the extra bonus and also a little bit of CC. Is that
That's
what your build was,
interesting. No, I
Katniss?
hadn't considered that one yet. Because, like you said, there is a free slot with that. There are really just 5 skills that you need to take. So you do get, you can mark for death, or you can apparently use sentries, which is an interesting idea. Especially because if you want to go Crider shot, then you don't really have a cold skill, so you don't have a way to proc Bane of the Trap, which of course is like the most powerful offensive gem, and you always want to work it in if you can. So that's interesting to me. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, the ones I've seen doing I've also seen people
Mhm.
using Ice Blink with it, especially in softcore, where you have sort of an extra. You don't need to use a defensive gem at all, which you don't really need to necessarily do in hardcore either. But I mean, it's not a bad set. It works very effectively. I just think it's a little too. There's just not enough to do. I mean, it feels like driving a manual after driving a stick shift. If you play, I mean, I played Marauders so much in season 1 and season 2, and it's so much about the sentry placement and the hatred management, and it's so heavy on the spenders. Whereas you get such a giant damage with the UE set with your generators and your spenders. And the only interesting thing about the gearing, of course, is that you want to get more discipline, and that's not something you really care about with a Marauder.
Right.
So. I mean, obviously, it's nice to have a little more discipline, but it's pure damage in UE. But we've heard enough. I think we've heard enough.
I'll
Demon
leave it
Hunter.
at easy to play, hard to master.
Yeah, one other brief thing on the Demon Hunter thing is I've been trying a little bit of the Marauder set recently, trying to see if there was power creep. Like all these other old sets are suddenly much more improved, because of the new gear and such. And Marauders doesn't really have any power creep. It's kind of odd. The focus restraint should work perfectly with it, but if you're doing that, then you have to go with the 6 pieces of the set because you don't have an RORG on, which means you can't use the Blind Faith Helm. And the Marauder set is so resource intensive, so hatred intensive, that giving up that helm, the helm's additional hatred is, I think, not even worth the damage. It's pretty much equivalent to the damage buff you get from using focus
Oh, you
and
mean
restraint.
Pride's Fall?
I suppose if you were doing multiplayer, I mean, if you had, a Crider shot or something, or if you had multiplayer and you had a ZDPS wizard or somebody, or a witch doctor, who could pop a bunch of orbs out, then you would benefit from getting all the extra orbs. But solo, at least, that doesn't seem like Marauders is really improved by new gear that much, which is kind of odd given that every other so many other classes are vastly improved with items like the the new Convention of Elements ring. Which was my next topic. Just to not to go into too much detail on this, but have you guys used Convention of Elements ring? Do you find it to be much more powerful than SOJ or anything else? And do you have problems keeping track of which element is currently buffed?
AdAstra, if you want to go first, you can go on this one.
I don't know. I'm on the fence. I use it. I use it for my Barb. I've used it for my my Crusader, and I tend to leave it on because I do have those waves of damage, and I'm seeing big numbers, but I don't know that it's necessarily the best. I don't know. I'm on the fence. It's so inconsistent. It seems. Does anybody else feel that way?
I think it's the best
I
overall one. What do you
agree.
think,
I think
Katniss?
it
Yeah.
definitely has what's the word? It has kind of erratic. Not I don't know. I just think it's above Stone of Jordan, like you asked originally. I do believe that, especially if your build can afford to use a second element, like on my Barb, I'm using the Cold Rune for Rend, Mutilate, and then I'm
Uh-huh.
using mostly physical for everything else. So you already have two parts of the ring that are working for you, and it's only a 4 element rotation for Barbs, so you're getting
What
50%
about
up.
elements on your gear? Like, I mean, what are you wearing? Is it all physical, or some? Are you mixing it up?
So like I would
Your
use
bracers.
physical. Yeah, on the
Okay.
bracers I would use physical just because that's like the main portion of the damage of the build. So whenever physical isn't up on the ring, I'm still getting a benefit from elemental damage. But
Hmm.
obviously when physical comes up, it's a huge portion. It's actually when I like choose to go in quotes. And so like I'll actually put a little bit of caution to the wind and utilize that full uptime on the physical portion of the ring just to make sure I'm maximizing my use of the convention of elements. But I think it's a really strong ring.
And do you have a build that has a burst damage? I mean, because some builds you're kind of doing the same, consistent damage all the time, and you don't really benefit that much, except every, 25% of the time or 20% of the time, suddenly you're doing four times
Hmm.
damage, right? Or, I mean, you'll notice bigger numbers, but are you able to time it? Because I mean, I've seen people complaining about it that it's too hard to tell what buff is up right
I do
then. You have a little cool swirly effect on your character, but it's really hard to tell, and in the chaos of
Exactly.
battle. And you have the tiny little buff on your icon bar, but of course we've had icon bar debates for months where there's you have 14 buffs showing and you can't even see what the
That's
hell's
true.
happening,
Yeah, I
right?
wish it
So
did have priority. I wish it was kind of relegated to sticking to the first or second buff that is on your bar at all times. Because yeah, you can get it pushed off. Like if you, especially what I was noticing today, I was playing in a group and I had what is that stupid thing? Nephilim Glory from
Yeah.
those orbs, and then
Uh-huh.
yeah,
yeah, and
the
it
yellow orb
maintains
thing,
now
yeah.
if you get health orbs. It like gives more duration to it, and
Yeah.
so
It always did, but it's like a second is
yeah,
all it
it's
used to
well,
be
it
anyway.
seems significant now. So I have a rune on my barb where I can generate more health orbs with crits and things like that. And so I actually found myself not picking up the health orbs until the stupid Nephilim glory thing dropped off, just so I could see conventional elements again. It was the weirdest, like, why is this a thing right now? Kind of moment.
We'll be using the gloves to give you 10-minute shrines too, and then you just have
I
every
didn't
buff
even
in the
think
world.
about that. Yeah.
And you're playing with you're playing with a character with auras and stuff, and you just have sometimes you're getting a four-player game, and everyone's got a couple of buffs, and you're like it's like barb confetti, and it's like bar confetti. You can't see which icon you're on. The complaint I have about convention of elements, I mean, it varies from character to character, but with a demon hunter, you get fire, cold, physical, and lightning. And fire is really distinctive. It's an obvious kind of an orangish red color. The other ones are all kind of a dark bluish gray. Cold's a little bit brighter blue, but of course it has the little second hand moving around the outside of the icon. So if it's like halfway covered, it looks kind of like it looks almost exactly the same as physical. Halfway through blue looks the same as physical, and then lightning is kind of the same color. I think lightning should be like a yellowish or something. I mean, obviously this varies between characters. If you have poison, it's a bright green. You can see it clearly, kind of thing. So I wish the icon was bigger. It was easier to notice. It's really hard for me to time the buffs. Even though when I'm playing with a Natalya's spin, it doesn't matter. I'm just I'm doing Rain of Vengeance every 3 seconds. Regardless of what my Convention of Elements ring is
Right.
on,
And
right?
I guess
So
that was what
ironically, it makes a huge difference if you're playing a Marauders, but I'm not playing Marauders anymore because God forbid.
Right. So I guess, that kind of two-part answer to your question. So there's the question about bursting. I think probably the best class you're going to see with that is the Tal Rasha Wizards because they're dropping their meteors almost ahead of the or they're proccing whatever element they want to use almost ahead of the ring so that by the time the meteor falls, they kind of get that bonus lined up if they can time it out. So you're kind of seeing some burst-ish potential from that. But yeah, like you mentioned, if you have like a build that kind of is just constantly outputting damage, like the Nats spin to win or like the Barb spin to win, for instance, then you're kind of just always doing the damage. And then you just notice, hey, look, my tornadoes are ticking for more than usual because your element is up or something like that.
Yeah, suddenly your numbers are much bigger, which is a good thing. Any last convention of elements thoughts
I
there,
guess my main
AdAstra?
one is like why I'm thinking of actually about Skull Grasp. Like as a Barb, I'm wondering why that ring doesn't compete with convention of elements. It's like I was kind of psyched about it when I found my first one. I was thinking, oh, this is great because I found convention first and I put it on. And why doesn't that compete with it? What's the deal with the damage with that?
It's the difference between additive and multiplicative, unfortunately. If that bonus were multiplicative, every Barb who is worth their salt would be wearing a Skull Grasp by far.
I mean, I guess I'm wondering why they didn't think of that ahead of time. And what's the point of making that ring, or if it's going to drop in the same afternoon as the convention of elements.
Well, I guess it's not for you then, right? Like it's not for the player who is going to eventually find a convention of
Everything.
elements or a stone of joy. Yeah, not going to find everything.
What do you mean eventually, man?
I
Those
mean,
things
it's
drop like
true.
candy.
It's true. It's definitely the tier.
And every one of them has what? CC and a
It's going to be
socket.
good
So
no
I
matter
mean,
what.
like the odds are really good that it's
It's
going to be an
very
awesome
true.
ring,
And I
right?
don't
Yeah.
mean to complain. Like there's so many great changes, and I like a lot of what's going on. I just feel like that was an oversight because I want to see. I like options. That's all.
I think you have to, but like, isn't it? It's kind of like how they say, like, to appreciate a sunny day, you have to have a rainy day. Like, I think you have to design some
It's a
items.
rainy day ring.
It's a rainy day ring. Like, you have to design some items that just aren't super in order to have like a full spectrum.
Here, make this one kind of shucky.
That seems like a mistake on the developers, though. I mean, making the whole multiplicative versus additive thing, because like you see the display, it looks, oh wow, 300% will run damage.
Hmm.
Oh my
I'm
god.
gonna get that ring.
And then you use it, and it's like, why is this not doing awesome things?
What they
But maybe they should make it multiplicative and change the damage range to 40 to
Or
50%
right,
or
or
something,
even
right?
even if they don't want to go that route, make it apply to the Dust Devils because right now it only buffs up your actual Whirlwind. It doesn't buff up the damage that Dust Devils do, and that's kind of what everyone is aiming for with the Wrath of the Waste set. So just buff the tornadoes and call it a day.
There's so many little things with jewelry I'd love to see changed. I mean, like little things, but like the Ring of Royal Grandeur, it's still a great ring, but I wish they would just make it so that it could roll any stat. Like, why does it always have to roll main stat, attack speed, and life on hit? Like, it,
It'd be
well,
too
it's
good
just time.
otherwise.
It's time. I mean, just I'm not asking for a major upgrade there, just an opportunity to maybe get a socket and this and that, whatever.
Yeah, I just had more opportunity to run Act 1 bounties. That would be awesome. If they could just put that in. Are you guys annoyed they took off all the possibility of a damage mod rolling on Ring of Royal Grandeur this
What do you
season?
mean by that?
It's impossible. I found like 15 of them. None of them have it.
Oh,
Therefore, it cannot occur.
you're fluxing. I get it.
The other annoying thing earlier this season was when they briefly had in the whole thing where unities were unique equipped by an account to make it actually impossible to find a second unity, because that's the only possible explanation for the 25,000 blood shards I sunk into rings and never got a second unity
Must have
until
been
I
a hidden
found
patch
one.
note.
Yeah, that was in just the special Flux version of the
Ah.
game probably. The best part about that is I literally spent I probably 40 or 50,000 blood shards. I mean, I spent every blood shard from like Paragon 200 to like 420 just on rings, and never got a unity. And then I finally found one of the goddamn
You're
things.
you're being
My
punished.
second
You're
one.
actually being punked by the staff over there.
Well, we'll get to that later when
Oh
we get to
boy.
the whole Blizzard thing. What my punishment begins. And then, of course, I immediately got my second Unity. I had a GR 39 stone was the highest I'd done. I did that one, upgraded to 42, and did that one just to get over 40 to get the conquest, right? And then, of course, the Guardian on 42 dropped another Unity, my third one. So obviously, it was part of their plan. The limiting factor was I had to do a Greater Rift over 40 to get more Unities, and since then I found a
But
couple
you know
more.
what?
So it was nice that I
But
broke
you
through
know
the
what?
barrier
Like,
there.
it's weird to me to hear this complaint in season three because, like, AdAstra was just saying, well, kind of saying, we do have ring options. You know, maybe Skull Grasp isn't as great as it should be, but we have many options. People are taking focus and restraint, even in hardcore. And so there's not really, I'm just surprised to still hear that there's that like urge and this need for unity. Like, I actually don't think we need it all that much
I
anymore.
use Unity. I mean, in softcore,
Says the guy with 160 million toughness
Yeah,
barbarian.
exactly.
Even
So if you're not playing hardcore and you're playing at Barb and you're pushing higher grifts, you're wearing a Unity. So
I think Katniss may disagree with that. Are you wearing a unit? What's your highest solo
In
GR for
softcore?
Barb, Katniss?
in hardcore.
And was a
No
Unity
Unity.
involved?
No, Barbs have way too many ways to mitigate damage to need to use a Unity. Like I think honestly, the biggest part for Barbs going up is going to be finding that sweet spot of mitigation and damage output. Because you can do both really well, but if you slack on one or the other, you're either not going to make the time or you're probably going to be too scared to go forward and make the time. So, I mean, you have Striding Giant, you have Together as One, and then you just have in general all the different things that help get your toughness up. So as a
yeah, you've
bard,
got superstition, you've got immunity amulets.
yeah, you don't really
There's
need
a,
Unity.
but Unity is great. I mean, like that's the thing. It depends on how high you want to push. In hardcore, I don't know like how crazy you actually go. I don't. Do you ever like lose your mind and just go, I'm just going to keep going, or do you ever just cash out and you're like, well, it's just too hot for me. I have to back off, even though I have.
Well, at the end of last season we tried that and it turned out poorly. So
It's called calculated risk.
Katniss and I both wiped in the same 4-player game in the end of season 2.
was fun.
So, which is what 45 or something. We were just getting warmed up too.
Mhm.
We just got careless.
Oh God.
Yeah, we were like almost. We were like almost finished at like 5 minutes into the rift, and we were going to finish it easily. We got greedy and
Zoned
ran around
out
too
by
fast.
stuff, yeah. Um,
And then 3 out of 4 wiped in that game, right? The Witch Doctor got away,
both
or the
the
Barb
Witch
got
Doctor
away.
and the Crusader both got away. Yeah,
They
'cause it
both got
depends-
away. I thought one of them died. I thought the screenshot I had of my death, they were
I
both
think that was
showing
me.
dead also.
The
Well, it was you also, but I think the other guy was showing 0 hit points.
maybe
He procced,
the support classes have a lot of ways to get out of dodge. So
yeah, given they can lock down everything on the screen, yeah, I'm not so worried. So one other topic that I was going to get to after convention of elements thing is the damage display visuals. I mean, I've seen complaints lately that the power creep, the numbers are getting bigger and bigger. And if you watch someone's video of a higher level kill and like they just nonstop popping like 2 to 10 trillion damages on things, sorry, billion, not trillion. I mean that'll be the next patch probably, but I have had lots of trouble even being able to tell how much damage I'm doing. If you have pretty much every build now has like massive AoE, right? You're hitting 50 things with every shot, or every punch, or every whirlwind, or whatever. Are you guys having problems picking out the numbers? Would you like it to be simplified? Suggestions I've seen, it should say like 1.8b instead of 1,847, 336, blah blah blah, right? Do you get kind of
I
number
would
spam?
love to see like your highest numbers, like maybe show up in a feed or, like or your highest numbers for the grift. But I definitely have that problem. I turn off all numbers except for my crits. That's all I want to see.
And you're probably at 65% crit or something anyway, so you get a kind
Yeah,
of
you get.
stop,
I mean,
right?
you see a lot, but it's too much. It's too much clutter on the screen right now. I do want to see my numbers though.
Have you had that problem, Katniss? I mean, I definitely agree with what he just said. So.
it's kind of moot. Like why? I guess why do you care, right? Like if monsters are dying,
Because numbers, dude.
oh man,
It's
I get
about
it.
EPing there.
Yeah,
so-
people exactly. It's the EP, right? People want to see like, oh man, I got billion crit. Like I get it, but it doesn't matter to me. I don't know. I don't. I guess I'm not. It's nothing that has ever run through my head. Like I wish I could read that number better because I just care if the monsters are dying faster or if they're not. And
Well, I mean, if you switch gear, you want to be able to see the higher numbers, but if you're getting 50 hits so quickly, it's really hard to tell. They refuse to give us a DPS meter, so you can kind of do like the same Greater Rift number a few times in a row with different gear and kind of try to average it out. But that's so dependent upon monster density and
oh yeah, a
monster
lot of
type and
factors.
stuff. I just wish there was a better way to tell. I mean, I'm switching gear around all the time. You switch a rune sometimes with a new build. Or you upgrade one of your legendary gems a few levels, and you're like, am I actually doing better now? I mean, maybe I just got a bad spawn that time.
Which brings me. I don't want to interrupt, but I have to talk about this. Which brings me to the whole thing.
Before you change it, just one suggestion I had for that is if the numbers over 1 billion were orange or something like that instead of being yellow. I mean, if there was like a color, maybe the numbers could fade toward red as they got bigger. Like every couple of billion, it would change color or something like that. Put it in an option menu if you don't want it, that kind of thing. Anyway, go ahead, AdAstra.
It's on that subject. I'm just saying that there is so many people using. There are people using this. It's like a software that plugs into Diablo, and
ban them.
well,
ban
that's
them all.
the thing. It's
and post a big list of it, right, Katniss?
Oh,
well,
God.
so I wanted to know what you guys think about this. It's like Gabinator admitted to using this on the forums, on the Diablo BattleNet forums. He said he uses it all the time, and like he couldn't have gotten the #1 spot if he didn't use it, and they didn't take him down, and so everyone is using it. I know. I mean, I've just heard of tons of people that are using this. I am not using it because I don't ever want to get banned. But are they going to ban people for using it? Are they going to give a pass on this and just be vocal about it, or is it just going to be one of those things? Because what it basically does is it doesn't give you. It's almost like a map hack, but instead of giving away most of the map, it does more of this like numbers thing where it tells you what your damage was, like how much experience you gained. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about. I guess we probably shouldn't say the name of it. People probably know what it is. I'm completely against it. I don't think that it should be used. I think that so this is like the one thing that I usually harp on and kind of take a hard line on. I really
Hmm.
hate when players do things that make the game less challenging for them. And what I mean by that is using something,
Like the unlimited, like the
but
Unhallowed Essences set, you mean?
what I mean by that is things like that are they cross that weird line of like, is it okay or not to use? And obviously, like the numlock thing is not being banned, right? Like it's just a feature that's kind of like unintentionally in there. But to me, it's like a crutch. You're basically playing the game with crutches, and at some point, if they decide to like action this thing or get rid of it, will you remember how to play the game? Will you actually be able to do what you're supposed to do in order to be a good player? Like it to me, those things always bug me because it's like you're shortcutting yourself. It's basically like how they always say, like in cheating, you cheat yourself because you're not going to learn the skills that you need in order to be an actual better player. You're just kind of copying or borrowing or whatever. You're running on borrowed time. So I don't know.
The numbers lock thing is a whole other issue. I mean, the
Yeah, I don't
numlock
want
thing. I
to.
just want to say on behalf of that.
I've only got 9 functional fingers right now, so I'm
Yeah, so
sensitive
for
to
me,
this
my
issue.
hand hurts, and I'm not even exaggerating. I get wrist pain and hand pain from playing this for probably too many hours. But I love the game. It's a major escape for me. However, I don't want to walk away from this without able hands. So it's like numlock thing. I only discovered it like a month or two back. Like at the end of season 2, and I was like, if I had known about this a year ago, I'd probably have less pain in my hand today. So I don't know how you feel about that, but the other thing, the
Katniss feels you deserve to have
That's
hand
more of a
pain. That's
exactly.
design
clear.
flaw by the team. I think they should design things that don't hurt your hands.
I think I don't even think it's a design flaw. I think it's just, I mean, it's such a simple game. You've got a mouse and 4 buttons. I don't really think it's that bad. It's from playing too much. But in the end, if you use the numlock thing, the numlock trick, you're just hammering your hands less. So I feel like it's a good thing. It's healthier. I think the bigger problem is creating season to season to season without a break. That is actually harder on the hands than a bad setup for the game. But that's another topic.
Well, the time to take off is in the middle of a season, because the start there's a big rush, and the end there's a big push, and in the middle it
Not if
can
you
be
want
kind
to
of a dead
win.
time. Well, there is that, of
Yeah.
course. And you're only peregrinating 107 weeks last season, so apparently you did win.
Well, yeah, I actually didn't. I fell on my face, but I'm saying, I don't know.
You had more paragons
But
than me.
I was grinding.
Probably even more than Katniss. Were you peregrinating 100 last
No,
season,
not even
Katniss?
close.
Well, failure. Get off the
Yeah, but it's
podcast.
softcore. It's a different world. I was like,
Exactly.
it's not comparable. Um, I don't know.
I mean, the control thing, people have wanted, it's funny because you look at World of Warcraft, and so much of Diablo 3 that was inspired by, design theories from World of Warcraft, and that game is almost defined by, like UI mods. And you see these screenshots of healers, and the entire screen is just covered with little boxes of people showing people's health and stuff. Like there's no game. You're just sitting in the back, and you can see one little tiny window. There's a dragon somewhere in the background, and everything else you're doing is clicking on other people's health bars or casting spells or whatever. And they wanted, very early with Diablo 3 to not have that, so they've banned all kinds of mods and all kinds
Hmm.
of UI stuff. And as you were just saying, AdAstra, people are starting to use some of those. And the one thing people have wanted forever is a better cursor. I mean, it's so easy to lose that
That's
gauntlet in a
one of the
big
things it
chaotic
does. It gives you like a
mess.
giant pink cursor or
And people
something.
have like, yeah, this like neon cursors and stuff
Yeah,
now.
and
So
also like number crunching. Like, so for example, when you get a pair of bracers and you're like, do I go for 0.5% crit chance, or do I go for 3% more physical damage, elemental damage, and you're not really sure, or do I upgrade my strength or my dex to the max on this? Like, what's going to be the best? I think that I've heard that this program will give you will give you just the math on that. So a lot of people are just not math savvy. They don't really even know what's going to affect the outcome of your output of damage more. So I mean, maybe those things should be incorporated into the actual Diablo software, but into the game itself, but they're not. And they don't have, do we know that they have intentions to do this? And maybe that's why they're not punishing players for using the software. But I kind of wish I knew what they were going to do, because it'd be good to know and be able to use it. I don't know.
A leading
Yeah.
question there. Well, people have often asked, a DPS meter, and they say no. People ask, like, can we have like a punching bag in town? You could actually test out different builds and get, you tell you how much damage you did over
That would be
20
great.
seconds or something, and they're like, no. I mean, I've been asking since almost since the launch. I just want to be able to map 5 hotkeys to the keyboard and just put force move on the left click, and not have to put a skill on both mouse buttons if I don't want to. And they're like, no. I mean, this is all stuff that would have been enabled like the day after launch if we had UI mods allowed in the game. And it's just so weird that they're so resistant to putting any of this kind of stuff in. And I guess you could argue it's kind of a skill thing. I mean, forever people were what you were just saying. Do I want to add more CC or more elemental damage or whatever? And they would be like, well, you can go to websites and just like look at your character and Diablo progress and see that. It's like, that's really your solution? Go to some third-party website that may or may not have bugs and check my character that way? Shouldn't the game tell me this stuff? You're big on defending Blizzard, Katniss. You like the way the game is. You don't want cheat modes. Can you defend? Why don't they have these simple tools? How can the developers tell us, yeah, go to a third-party site and look at this. That's the best way to tell it. How come the game doesn't tell us this stuff
All right.
itself? Instead of just having up down arrows that are
Two
red or
things.
green.
One, I'm not a Blizzard defender so much as I'm a defender of like
Oh
expert.
shit. Oh shit.
That's a bad cough, man.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not so much a defender of Blizzard as I am a defender of expert like gameplay, of like high level gameplay. And to some degree, I think they get it, and to some degree, I think they don't. So I'm going to be fair where I need to be fair. The second part is that if they ever said that, that's kind of crazy because yeah, they shut down like they came up with the auction house to like shut down third party sites and stuff. So saying it's bad for one thing and good for another thing is kind of crazy. But I think that it encourages people who, if you actually care, if you are looking at your gear that hard enough to figure out if one thing is going to be an upgrade or not versus percents and flat damage and increases and whatnot, do the math. Like you can actually take your character, create a spreadsheet or whatever, like use a calculator. All you need is a calculator and just figure out what's going to be better for you. If you really, really care.
This is America.
Well,
We
that's what I'm
don't do
saying.
math in
Players want
America.
like that, and
Numbers
this
are
is the
hard.
thing, right? Like the majority of players are just lazy, and that's why that's why fan sites do well because there are builds on there, and people just copy builds. People are looking for the shortest way to the answer to get like the glory, so they want it all they want it all figured out without figuring it out. And I don't know. To me, just and I hate being like the back in my day, games were harder and people tried harder.
Yeah, in other words, get off my lawn. Is what you're saying here,
I hate to
basically.
come off that
when
way.
I was doing this.
That's actually really good.
Back when wearing onions on your belt was a thing. Was the style in those days. We used to add up our stats with calculators.
I don't know. There's probably a middle ground. I think that there should be more utility inside the game. I think one of the things that they're afraid of doing is complicating the game too much because that's always been the thing in the past, right? Like we used to make the joke about Bashiok's grandmother like not being able to play the game, so that's why certain features weren't in or whatever.
It was Bashiok's mother. It was Wyatt Chang's grandmother, as I
Gotcha.
recall this. And Wyatt actually said, "My grandmother couldn't figure this out." I'm like, well, better nerf the game, man.
Well, there you go.
And obviously, I don't even know if it was just Jay Wilson. He didn't actually have any relatives. It was just Jay Wilson couldn't figure it out, so that was his fault
Right.
directly.
So they made the Barb simple and powerful.
Well, that was Diablo 3 Vanilla.
But yeah, I definitely. So here's the thing, though. I like completely feel your guys' pain in terms of wanting there to be more. Because I think in the end of the day, like we all just want more. Like even if you don't utilize all the tools, like if you have control over what you can and can't see, like the same thing, modifying the numbers, for instance, being able to turn on a calculator that says, okay, like I want to know the difference between like crit versus elemental versus just main stat. They should be in there, and if you want to use them, you can use them. It does suck when you have to go to a third party. It does suck when someone's building this thing that's like, should I use it or should I not? Do I care about that status of my account?
Yeah, and you're
So
dealing with Rick, real life time constraints. Like you want to get in hours of play, but you're limited because you have to work and you have things to do. So I feel like maybe that's why they let this one particular site have go so long, and why somebody could even get on BattleNet and say, I got the number one spot using this, this third party software. I don't understand why that person wasn't punished, but he was really vocal about it. They all saw it. So I don't know. There's definitely got to be a little more coming, but they have a lot of work cut out for them. They have a lot of stuff coming up, maybe an expansion, maybe maybe they're going to get on that skull grasp. Who knows?
one can dream, right?
Yeah, maybe they're going to give us more storage
Okay,
space, which I could talk about. I mean,
well, only if you're Russian or Chinese, and then you can buy it. The rest of us are just
I don't
SOL.
understand that. It needs to be addressed every single time you have a podcast until somebody says, "Hey, they need more storage space."
I mean, I posted votes. Would you guys pay for more storage space and stuff? And everyone's like, yes. And Blizzard's like, well, we're going to do that, but only in certain territories where the game is F2P and P2W apparently also. But that's not what we're doing because it's different that way. But that's another 20-minute topic. We need to wrap this up pretty quickly. So the one other thing I wanted to get into was the I posted a list of stuff someone had compiled on BattleNet about the percentage of progress of that you're granted for different monster kills. And that was a list that was compiled like a few months ago, but it's still current. I mean, the information is still accurate. And I'd never seen it before. I
leafed
was
through it,
bitching about that. And you notice that when you do riffs sometimes, especially in T6, you'll start zooming through it and you feel like you're making really good time, and you look and you're only like 44%, and you're like, what? And other times you'll look and you're like 87%. You're like, I just started. What happened here? Like sometimes you almost like lose track. Like you feel like it's a bug. And of course, the reason is because some monsters are worth way more experience than others. And if you get a map that's got a bunch of ones that are worth 1.2% each, like the really big monsters, and you're wiping those, you're really powerful on T6, you can get, that's how you get those 60-second, 90-second rift clears. And it's easy to miss. And the thing that many people were pointing out, looking at the numbers, is like, how come they don't take AI into account on this? And, the most obvious examples are the goddamn Lakudi Huntresses and the goddamn Winged Assassins, right? Like monsters that leap and jump and have like periods of invulnerability in their
Spoken like a
movements
true
and
DH.
such. And they're worth like 2% of a thing. And then like some big slow walking, some zombie that's just an experienced punching bag, right? And it doesn't even move and it's just helpless, is worth like more percentages. And they're never immune or whatever. So did you guys look that over? Do you have a sense if that, or if not you've looked it over? Do you have a sense that some monsters seem to be too valuable or not valuable enough? And would you like it to be a little more scaled to how difficult they are? I mean, Sandwash should be worth more than
Yeah,
blood
Sandwasps
zombies,
are the
right?
worst. But
And they're worth like 0.1% because they have very few hit points. So it just seems like that Blizzard should, they've done a million rebalances on Realm of Trials, which is going away anyway, right? But I remember like every patch for a while, they were like changing the monster compositions and how much they were worth and how many of them spawned. And you would sometimes get ones where like 10 like sand golems popped up at once, and it's like, well, suddenly I'm 3 waves
Right.
behind, that kind of thing. But somehow they haven't really done much of that in the greater rifts and in the realm of T6 doesn't matter kind of because it's so easy, but it seems like so much of if people get a record time on a greater rift is if they get let's not get into sand shifter because that's like a whole other podcast, right? But there's just a lot of disparity between what monsters should be worth and what they are worth, and it seems like some of them are way too easy or way too hard. Or is that just monster spawn RNG? AdAstra, what do you think?
I think it has a lot to do with memorizing this list. I mean, you have to basically, like all the top players that I watch streamers because I'm trying to just get strategy. They know which monsters they've known all for months. They know which monsters are worth more EXP, and you kind of have to size up the rift as soon as you get in it and know whether you're going to push for a while or if it's a waste of time, after a certain point, and you've got to abandon ship because a lot of these little monsters and annoying monsters aren't worth anything, and they're just plaguing you, and you have to kill them to move forward. So, I mean, I'd love to see more balance there for sure. And what's horrible is some of the big monsters with tons of armor that take way too long to kill are not worth enough EXP. You think that you're going to get a big boost of EXP for knocking them down, and you don't get it. So they're a waste of time. But people don't realize that, so they sit there and they hammer on everything.
And there's the mid-range ones like Lacunae Huntresses that aren't worth much, but jump around a lot.
But the
Winged Assassins or Tongue Lashers or whatever.
Huntresses have tons of hit points. Or they blow up for more. So like for example, when I was doing the monk and I palmed one of those guys, those were the ones, they were the softest and they blew up really big. So they would take down an entire party. I mean, I would aim for those in a group.
Yeah, but they have the whole unburrowing animation and leaping animation. It just makes them take longer to kill. Anyway, I said that 5 times. What do you think about the overall think of that, Katniss? Do you feel like there needs to be some tweaks made to progress values?
Oh, most
for
definitely.
monsters?
I think it's why we see fishing right now, and it's going to persist until there's more balance in terms of going from Act 1 to Act 2 to Act 3 to Act 4 to Act 5 monsters. I honestly like why not even just have it be that Act 1 monsters have a base amount of experience or progress that you get, and then have a multiplier going up, because it basically stands to reason that Act 1 monsters, it's easy because you start out in Act 1, and as you progress through the game, the monsters get harder. So all the Act 5 monsters, honestly, are pretty tough because they have extra abilities.
Well, there's like skeletons and zombies that are still just walking
For
punching
sure.
bags, though.
I mean, you get those in every act, right? So I guess to some degree, you can't just flat out like balance it by saying like, all right, 5 times in everything in Act 5, because right, you would just target all the
Double
easy
it.
ones. Yeah, yeah, exactly. That worked, right? um,
Yes,
yes.
Wilson's,
So
yes.
yeah,
So I mean, but like I mean, like corrupted angels, that kind of thing, and the stuff that everybody hates. That they charge you from off screen. They're hard to kill. They fly around. Wraiths. I mean, wraiths are in Act 1 and Act 2 for God's sakes, and they're like the most annoying monster you get. They fly over the walls and you can't shoot them for a
mhm.
minute and stuff. Out of reach. They're siphoning on you from like off the edge
Yeah,
of the
I would say
screen.
anything that a normal person would deem takes longer for them to track down or kill should have a bonus to it. So anything and then the thing that is going to make it tough to balance is that some monsters are hard for certain classes and easier for other classes,
Yeah, I was gonna say obviously there's some class here. I mean, everyone likes
for
zombies
sure.
though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
zombie riffs are the
Right,
dream, So
the true dream is the unburied goatman dream, because they give like amazing progress and they're very easy to take down. Then you get a stone singer at the end, and you're just like, all right, I set a new record, like easy. Uh,
But isn't this just monster RNG though? I mean, everything else in the game is random number generators, right? Shouldn't monsters be a little bit random as well?
yeah, yeah, but it got
Would it be boring if they were like a totally exact, progression of difficulty of monster versus experience? It's nice to find a sweet spot,
yeah, it's got to be reined into that sweet spot, and I don't think we're there yet.
I mean, while we're here talking about grifts, I do want to talk about the timer and the 30-second timer. I mean, you guys are not dealing with that in hardcore, but I feel like in softcore, this is something that we have to graduate from soon.
So just to recap, for people who don't play softcore and die in greater rifts, like 2 of us anyway. So when you die in a greater rift in softcore, you have the first time there's no penalty, then it's what? It's 5, 10, 15,
Because
20,
of the
25, 30.
seconds. Yeah, so I feel like it,
And the main complaint is that you're sitting there watching this timer click 30 seconds, and you would just like it to subtract 30 seconds from your timer and let you keep
yeah,
going
I
immediately.
think it'd be like the best way to go, and maybe there should be a bonus chance for you to if like I guess the problem is that they don't want people getting the opportunity to upgrade their gems so easily. So maybe there's a bonus for upgrading your gems if you finish in time, and there's like maybe like a not a punishment, but like less. You don't get the bonus if you don't finish in time. But instead of making people take 30 seconds out of their real lives, um, they could just take 30 seconds off the chance to complete it clock.
How about you just not die in greater rifts? How's that for a
Oh,
suggestion? What do you think about that one, Katniss? How about he doesn't die anymore? How about
I
that?
mean, it's one solution, I suppose. I like
that's not the softcore philosophy.
Don't talk crazy, man. No one
That's
I
does
not the
like
that.
the
softcore
idea.
philosophy.
I do like the idea though of incentivizing making the timer, and I think one thing that we cannot go back to, because if you recall vanilla days, there was so much of that. Inferno was like crazy hard, so people were literally just zerging their way through. You'd kill a mob, and then, or sorry, you'd attack a mob, you'd die, and then if you remember, you actually had to like res at checkpoints. So then you would come back, you would run up, and hopefully it hadn't like healed. And then the enrage timers, all that stuff. Like this is all stuff we need to like forget and keep in the past. And I don't want it to come back in the same fashion where like you're looking at the bar and you're looking at death and you're like, I can take 30 seconds here, so I'm just gonna die, and then like reposition yourself or whatever. It's a slippery slope, right? But I think if you do incentivize not dying, like let's say if you don't make the timer, you actually only get 2 chances to upgrade instead of the 3. And if you don't die and you make the timer or whatever, then you get like that bonus chance like you're talking about. So in that case, you're kind of incentivizing playing well, not necessarily like trying to like take deaths and just zerg your way through.
Yeah, because in softcore you're gonna push. You're gonna push. You know, I mean, if you're gonna like live through it, you're not gonna die. Then you're gonna push past your ability to complete. So you're going to feel those 30-second clocks if you're playing softcore. Everybody does, and they get stupid. You realize like I could be doing a lot with this time today. So it's the same thing with the gems that they had for like the last 3 years. They've had the gems upgrade one at a time, and you had to wait for each one. And then finally, somebody over at Blizzard said, this is kind of a waste of time. And they fixed it, and everybody's like, oh, we love this. This is fantastic. Like, why didn't this happen sooner? It's the same thing here. I just feel like take 30 seconds off the clock.
Well, the main complaint is what do you do in multiplayer games then? I guess you could just have to say that only works in single player. Because obviously if only one or two of you die in multiplayer, you can't take time off the clock because it's not, everyone else
Maybe
is
you can.
dead.
Maybe the whole team gets penalized for deaths off the clock.
Yeah, that could be an issue.
Well, then you're
I don't-
careful about who you
I
team
mean,
up
you
with.
you play. So if someone else dies in your game and you start losing time because someone else
Then
sucks,
you're careful about your
will you
team.
be happy with
You
that?
pick your team carefully.
I kind of like it as an idea because then it stops people from trying to get carries or whatever, like you're not going to want to have that guy come to your team who's obviously going to pull you back and just die his way through, to greater 46 or 47 or whatever and then
Exactly.
get his upgrades. You're going to want a team that's actually consistent and not dying or, dying as low as possible to help you keep pushing forward.
So we have a game, Diablo 3, that has essentially no death penalties in softcore. There's a little tiny bit of loss of durability on your gear. And the only place there's any kind of a death penalty is in greater rifts, where you actually have to waste like 5 or 10 seconds, and even that is intolerable.
It's not that simple.
So this is the only death penalty of any kind ever in the game, and it's like I can't wait 10 seconds to resurrect. Jeez, I got to cure cancer after this, man. Do you think you should be punished for dying or not? You should be punished, right? You failed. You need to
Oh
be
my
punished.
gosh.
That's what mommy always told me.
You should die. No, I mean, so it would be 10 seconds is
You
one
should.
thing, but let's say you're at the 30-second timer and and you get some horrible boss and you're gonna die 4 more times. That's a lot of you're done. You're not gonna make it anyway. So what's the point of making people wait out all that time? Just
Because they're suffering. It's a death penalty. That's why it's called penalty.
I just
You
don't
must
think the
suffer.
suffering should happen in your real
You need
life.
to be
I
unhappy
think it
and
should
bored.
happen in imaginary life, but not in real time.
The place where you can die repeatedly without actually being
Yeah.
dead. Anyway, yeah, I think it's. Can we get rid of the 30-second timer after rifts are ended too? By the way, I mean remember on the PTR that was like gone for a while at the start. We were like so happy,
Yes.
and they're like, "Oh, that's a bug. That's a bug." I'm like, "God damn it, that was the best thing in the patch."
You know what's funny too is they called it a bug, but they never defended why we have that timer. Like, what is it for? Is it to slow us down so that there's some psychological feeling of like, okay, my rift time is done, so I'm going to take a breather or something? Like, I wonder.
It's because Jay Wilson hates us.
I think
Dude.
it's for
Come on.
people to get a chance to pick
It's
up
because
their,
Jay
their
Wilson
stuff
hates
because they
us.
have so little room in their stash. They need more time to figure out like what they're going to pick up and what they're going to leave on the ground.
Uh-oh, there's the push. This.
Do you know in the initial version of that on when they were first PTRing it, it was only a 15-second penalty, and you know what happened? They doubled it.
Wilson.
Dope.
Yes, of course they Wilsoned it. So I had one other related thing I wanted to add to mention, but I've now forgotten it. Oh, we mentioned the expansion earlier. We need to do this just fairly quickly, but we had a guest article from a guy who did a bunch of research and how we think it's going to be. He thinks it's going to be Skovos and maybe some kind of assassin, druid, wolf creature combo for the expansion if we ever get an expansion pack, which is going to be announced 2 days before the end of the season at Gamescom, right,
Yes.
Katniss? Say yes. Excellent. So, I mean, Skovos is a cool set. We have lots of concept art from Skovos from back in 2006 and 7, and Blizzard at one point said they had it in the initial planning. They had Skovos and Urech, the least pronounceable word in the English language. Ureh. How do you pronounce that?
Urea.
Urea. Isn't urea what birds crap out of?
Urethra?
I don't. I guess it's an unpleasant name. But I mean, we have lots of concept art from Skovos. It seems pretty developed. These cool like underwater sort of Grecan tombs,
That was like
pyramids,
Nobbie's
temples,
article, or it
the
was
city
Nobbie or Nobbie
sinking.
Nobbie, right?
Yeah, and there's like Nobbie did that article, and there's like dungeons, and we have tons of concept art from this stuff by mixing with. The thing I thought was interesting is looking at all the old concept art. There's like one piece ever of concept art of Westmarch, which is of course the actual Act
Yeah,
Five,
and it's not fleshed out as
And there's
much as
like
the other stuff that he's showing.
yeah, it's like a really high level view of Westmarch, and there's like lots of canals through it. And in the game, you occasionally go across a couple of bridges, which you only notice because you have to wait for the drawbridge to close, or open that one little part of the map where there's a little tiny bridge. But it changed a lot from what they initially envisioned it. And my thought always was that they were planning on doing Skovos for Act 5, but then the whole too colorful thing kicked up, and rainbows, and why are there rainbows in my Diablo 3 stuff? And they wanted to make Act 5 super gothic, as the joke says, so gothic it shits bats. And of course, there actually is a monster in Act 5 that does in fact shit bats, so when it dies. So it seemed to me like they were planning on Skovos just based on the amount of concept art from it, and then they had to kind of change that because of the too colorful thing. And now they've done super dark gothic Act 5, right, which was way more gothic than anything ever. And then now they can maybe go back to something more colorful and have like bright sandy beaches, and then but also dark
Right.
dungeons and jungles and overgrown. There's all this stuff about the Amazons hunting in the rainforest and Skovos and stuff. Did you guys check out the article? Do you have any opinions on what you might see for an expansion, or are we even going to get an expansion? What do you
I
think,
think we will
Katniss?
get an expansion. The master plan back in the day was that there was supposed to be two, and who knows how far off they are on that whole schema in terms of the timeline and development for the game and whatnot.
We know it's 3 months off because it's coming at
Right,
Gamescom,
you're right.
2 days before season 3
Oh, I'm
ends. We've
sorry, I
already
have
covered
this
this.
bad memory thing going on right now.
I'm pretty sure you said
You
yes to that
told
about
me
30
to.
seconds ago. This sounds like my last date. I keep telling her to say yes, and then she says yes, and then 5 minutes later she's like, "What? I don't
Oh
remember that."
gosh, that's the
And then the
after
police
show,
showed up.
right?
Anyway, go
Oh
ahead.
my
Um,
gosh.
oh god.
That's what she said.
So yeah, I think there will be an expansion. I think that it makes a lot of sense for Skovos. I think a lot of people have been saying they want Skovos, so I could see them doing kind of like a fan appreciation shout out by pushing it there, especially because they do have all this assets and art like you guys have been noting. So I would not be surprised to see us go there. I think it'd make a lot of sense, especially because if you look at the atmospheres or the environments that we have, it would fit in terms of not overlapping with anything else that we've seen just yet. You can kind of say like, well, there's sand in the Act Two and whatnot, but not beachy sand, so it's different,
And no jungles at all. I mean, we haven't
right?
had that.
Yep.
I mean, the ruins of Sescheron that we saw at BlizzCon last year is a little bit of like a pine forest in
Hmm.
some parts of it, which is supposed to be coming in the next patch or maybe later. But so, what about the Amazon Druid Wolfman hybrid for seventh class? That seems a little more of a
I
stretch.
got under this with him on the forum actually. I'm hoping he's wrong. I was not as crazy about the druid as I was about the other classes from Diablo 2, so I'd love to see like a necromancer. But he seems to have his finger on the pulse of what's to come, and I mean, I do like the Venice, cityscape where the concept is everything's like kind of sinking, and there might be some like half submerged dungeons, and maybe they'll do some kind of visual thing where you're wading through water or something like that would be really cool to see visually.
And I thought monsters should be cool. I mean, there's obviously games like God of War and stuff that has sort of like Roman-inspired monster
Yeah,
types, and there's really nothing like that in Diablo 3 now. They could have, I mean, I don't even know what that would be exactly, but harpies and
Krakens.
that kind of stuff could be a little bit
Release
of
the
it.
Kraken.
Yeah, krakens are good. Yeah, I watched
Or
enough
like
hentai to know where this is
Cyclops,
going, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't know,
Hydras.
giants. I mean, it seems like that's a very like there's a lot of options there they haven't really done in the
Yeah.
current game, and it's not just more like I mean, we obviously seen kind of jungle monsters in Diablo 2. I'm sure they would have some like giant mosquitoes or whatever, but because we kind of have giant mosquitoes already. They shoot little babies at you, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think I joked about this with Nineball in the past on the podcast, long ago. You know, Nineball, Katniss, you
Oh,
talked to him
every
once or
now and
twice,
again,
right?
yeah.
About like, you know, they did the whole expansion Reaper of Souls, and then everyone played the story mode like once, and then just played Adventure mode ever since, right? And it was almost like a waste of resources to make all the characters and all the dialogue and all the lore and all the stories and all the the voiceovers and everything, when all we ever play today is just riffs. So would they consider doing like a a DLC expansion where it's $20 or whatever, and they just have lots of new tile sets and a new class and a bunch of new items, and don't spend all that time doing story and plot and dialogue and NPCs and stuff that no one ever actually interacts with? And I think I asked the Nine Ball, and then he had an aneurysm and passed out. And that's why he didn't go to BlizzCon last
Yeah,
year.
he loves the lore.
Yeah, he likes the lore. So, I mean, can you guys? I mean, I'm not saying I want this, but it almost seems like it would be smarter to do for the company. I guess they want to be able to justify charging $40 for an expansion pack, right? And you've got to have
Some
story
people
and a whole
love that.
content and stuff.
Yeah.
But it almost seems like a waste given what we actually play in the
No, I
game
think
today, right?
AdAstra is just about to start saying it. I think you're probably thinking with your like 1% hat on, your expert game player hat. Like a lot of people don't get into the whole like let's farm this game ad nauseum and go for these greater rift leaderboards, etc. Some people really just like to do their play through the story mode and dibble dabble in some adventure mode or whatever.
Yeah, Wyatt Shanks Graham
But I think
yes.
that I
and
think you
Dashiok's
can't
mom, yes. They
underestimate
love
that
that part.
audience though. Like they wouldn't build it if people wouldn't come. So I think if they
What are you, Kevin Costner? Dropping in
I
Fields of
haven't
Dreams
seen it, so
metaphors here?
I'm assuming it fits, right?
By the way, ad nauseum would be a great idea for an item set. That'd be a great name for an item set. Like it'd be like the next Witch Doctor set,
Does
the
it?
ad nauseum set. Like he vomits up a chicken or
It
something.
has to make your hand hurt too, though, right?
So you're all in for full I mean, obviously that's what Blizzard is doing, but then like Hearthstone or something, they're not putting out expansion plot. They're just putting
Hmm.
out more cards.
I think that's kind of what isn't that what we're seeing
Uh,
right now? Like they gave us brand new treasure goblins, they're giving us a brand new zone, and it's for free.
It was nearly an expansion. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, Blizzard's game model. I mean, obviously World of Warcraft has multiples of these, and StarCraft's doing a couple of them, and Diablo, Reaper of Souls was that. But then, in the future, I mean, Overwatch looks like they're probably just going to add more characters and tile sets. It's not going to have like the Nax
Hmm.
kind of thing, right? And then Hearthstone is obviously kind of the same thing. And then their other new game is, Heroes of the Storm. Is it
Hmm.
still called that, by the way? It's changed too many times. I keep forgetting. I remember it was Blizzard All Stars for
For
like a
a
weekend.
weekend.
That was cool.
I
It
think
was
they were
like,
just punking
like
us.
BlizzCon only, and then it was immediately back to something else. But I mean, that's not, that's just going to add more tile sets and more characters. So I mean, there's kind of a difference. Obviously not all their games are the full act style, but we all agreed that we're pretty sure that if they do it, they're going to do an Act 6 and a full
Yeah.
add-on thing.
Yeah. I think maybe the one thing to kind of tie in Ad Astra's desperate clamor for more stash space and the whole microtransactions thing. Like maybe this is something we can
Just move to Russia, man. It's easier that
That's how
way.
you get it.
Yeah, I'm gonna move to China so I can have more stash space.
Just move to Beijing. You can buy all the stash space you want.
It's a
That's the
good
price of
idea.
stash space. Yeah. Like maybe this is the groundwork for that though, right? Like it kind of ties both ideas together. So you get microtransactions working in one region. It's going to be a success because that's the way that model works over there. Then maybe they can bring it to our regions and Europe as well. And that's where they market these like, hey, here's a new Greater Rift map for you if you're tired of doing the same map. But what it does kind of complicate, and maybe you can't do it for Greater Rifts, is the competitiveness, the fairness. Because if one person unlocks like the new, I don't know, Ruins of Szechuan XYZ map, and it has like really amazing spawns for monsters and stuff, but guy over there can't afford it, so he can't compete on the leaderboard because he can't get that map, then what do you do?
$2.99. That's what you do.
Scrounge up the pennies.
You enter your credit card number. That's what you do, and then you buy
Oh,
it. So anyway, we're getting into Sanctuary Sweatshop time
yeah.
zone here. I know you're just getting warmed up, Kat. It's nearly an hour and a half in here. Any final thoughts, guys? Any topics you were dying to get into?
Gosh.
The one thing I didn't get to my whole EP thing just very briefly is my thought was that if you get a Greater Rift, say you've already got say you've done Greater Rift 52 and it was number 77 worldwide, and then later on that night you do a Greater Rift 50 and in 13 minutes, and that would have been that would have been rank 643. It should show you that, even though obviously you're not going to get it because you've already got a higher one. I just thought it would be cool to actually know that this would have actually been a rank if I didn't already have a better rank. And I mentioned this to you in Instant Messenger, Katniss, and you said yes, and they should also track all of your greater rifts. Like, have you done, greater rift 27 in, 4 minutes and 8 seconds or
It's
whatever,
basically
right?
keeping a list of personal
So you,
bests.
you want all of them
Yeah,
tracked
Yeah,
I was
forever?
because
talking to you about that in text too. That's right.
Would you break that up by class and by character, or just by your account, or what?
it's a lot of data to track, right? Like that's I guess that was the counter that you threw out there is that
That
yeah.
was my worry, yeah. But
I don't know. I think I would like to see it in terms of because when the reason I kind of thought of it that way is you tie it to running. Like if you do if you're a track runner, you run different events. So you might run the 800, the 400, the mile, and you have a personal best for each of those distances in kind of the same
Exactly.
fashion.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah. So like for your greater risk, you run the 49, the 48, the 50, and it'd be kind of cool to know, okay, on this list here I have my 49 that's a 6, and then my 50 was a 1337 or something, and then I like the idea of having a conquest where you want to get all those under 5 minutes or something, or even just a personal goal of like I want all of my riffs under 5 minutes, and you can track it. I mean, you could keep like a spreadsheet or piece of paper, but it'd be cool if the game supported it.
I like that.
yeah, and Battle.net is full of nothing if not competitive track runners. Let me tell you. I've been to BlizzCon, boy. It's like a decathlon there. So what do you think about that, AdAstra? I mean, I think we'd all say that's awesome, but Blizzard would say that'll be too much data to track and it'll clog down the servers. Like when you click the leaderboard, you right click on your character and click leaderboards, and there's like a 5 second delay sometimes while it loads up all top 1,000.
Yeah,
If every single person was also tracking all their top greater rifts, I mean, without
I know
crash the
Mascara would
system or
say, well, if we gave you that, you would just want more, so no, you can't have it. But
yeah, God forbid we get more of what we want. We're willing to pay for more of what we want. Now you still can't have it. It's like my first wife again. God damn it.
You're willing to pay her for more.
I was, and
Oh
now
my
look how that
God.
turned out. So everybody wants that, and we're not going to get it. So again, just like my first wife. Oh wait, everyone got her. Oh, never mind.
We're
Getting
not going to give
flashbacks
this
here.
to you because
So
you want more. We know you want it. You can't have
for
it.
one thing, I'll pass up that joke again. I've heard suggested forever that it would be cool if there was more of a competition for different stages of greater rifts. I mean, I like the whole tracking everyone's individual thing, but the thing I've heard suggested is if every 10th greater rift had like a top 1,000 leaderboard, so everyone in the world could try to get their best time on greater rift 10 and 20 and 30 and 40, right? And instead of just doing it once and then once you do greater rift 11, you never see your greater
Yeah,
rift
I
10
hate
score
that.
again, right? If you could actually just like totally gear, who's the fastest in the world at Greater Rift 20? Everybody, there's a top 1,000 leaderboard just for that Greater Rift, and also everyone's highest one overall. It would only add a few things to the tracking mechanism, and of course that would just, as Josh would say, if we just give you that, you would just want more. So why we can't give it to
Exactly.
you,
But
right?
but I mean, I bet you they already have those stats. They
But I
have
just
them. They know. They're watching. You know.
I just think, yeah, and I just think the fun of that would be that it would be nice to compete for something that wasn't the maximum possible skill of your character. I mean, it's awesome that people can compete on Gritter at 57 or 62 or whatever, but very few people can actually do that. Everyone can do a Gritter of 20, of any kind of decent gear. Maybe you can't do it in 14 seconds like Katniss is super fast, whatever, but you could, like, oh, how, you'd be looking, how can people do this in 47 seconds? I can't imagine that. And you can kind of try to figure it out for yourself. They'll be like almost like a mini game, right? Or like a kind of like low
Hmm.
level dueling in a way, like low level greater
Yeah,
rifts.
I don't.
we'd have new
I
stars of
just
the
think it would add a
game.
little
Is
bit of
what
a
would happen.
I mean, it would add some fun to the game. It doesn't cost anything. It's the same gear we've got. It would just be something different to do that doesn't seem like it would be a big deal to implement. But I'm sure that would take 7 years and Jay Wilson's aunt to code it. So who knows, right?
I like it. I actually would like to see it be cross class too. So instead of how like right now solo stuff is limited to DH against DH, Barb against Barb. It'd be really cool if the like GR10 was just this global list and you made it so, Barb's like I have the build figured out for GR10 and then they're getting it down like,
Yeah, that was actually my thought.
oh,
I was
okay,
thinking all
yeah,
classes together, but I should say that explicitly. Yeah, as you say, it would be much more fun if
absolutely.
everyone could do it. And I think that'd be fun on every Greater Rift. But I mean, I'm just saying, if you do it every 10, then there's only like 5 or 6 of them that even
Hmm.
matter, right? As opposed to everyone's like, oh, I did GR14 faster. It's like no one cares. It's a little too fine grained, right? But if it was even if they just made, even every 25, they could make a 25 and a 35 and a 50 or something like that. Just they would call it Greater Rift Challenge Level 1 or something like that. It's the equivalent of T6, something like that. I mean, just it's almost like an esports thing, and they've strongly resisted doing any kind of esports or competitive gaming stuff.
They're doing it.
But anyway,
They
I mean,
say they are
that seems
against
like it'd be
that,
a cool feature.
but they've done it with ladders, so it's here.
I just want a little more. Yeah, I just want a little more detail on the ladders. But anyway, any final thoughts, guys?
I
We
could
keep
go
adding in
go
one
on and
final
on.
thing, and then it goes 5 more minutes.
I would like to.
What is your current favorite thing in the game, and what is your biggest pet peeve? AdAstra.
Oh, my. All right,
Briefly,
briefly,
please.
my pet peeves. The blue situation, farming for blue items, and like drops for blue dust at the end. I mean, it's just what's happening here. They upgraded everything in this game, but you're just crippled by this. You can't craft, you can't change things because you're always out of that. I'd like to see some kind of upgrade there and to stash space, of course, but I could go on and on. Hellfire amulets should come with a socket. I could, change.
Okay, you're filibustering. I said one, you said three. Okay, what is your one or two biggest pet peeves now,
All
Katniss?
right, so well, let me say my favorite thing. My favorite thing right now is the diversity within each class and within the sets and whatnot. Because we just had an argument in DH about like 3 sets, which is amazing. You couldn't have that argument last season. It's Marauders
Sure.
or die.
Well, we only have one set, so yes.
Exactly. So I love that. I think that's great. The one thing that is kind of painful right now is Hellfire farming. Yeah, so kind of piggybacking on AdAstra. Just
I had a whole topic for that tonight. We didn't
it's a
get to it,
bummer.
but yeah, I mean,
the keys need more consistency. Like going 0 for 4 on all the keys in one game just shouldn't happen. It feels bad.
the suggestion I've heard from people in, I think it was Lanthanate actually. He's a longtime reader of the site. Back in the old Diablo 1 days, I used to play with him even. Saying that they should make the keys like a materials thing, so you could get like, say you needed 10 of material X to make a key, you would always get at least 1 or 2, and you could get as many as 5 or 6. So you would never get a 0. You would just get like a tenth or a 20th, or you might get up to like a 50th or a 60th. So in theory, it would take roughly the same amount. You could obviously scale it to say the most you can get is a half of a key, and that way you would never totally fail. You would always get at least 10%.
I think that's
of key.
huge because in terms of player psychology, like the one thing you don't want to feel, I think AdAstra is kind of harping on this like as a theme of the show, is you don't want that feeling of like wasted time because especially since it's so limited, we all do other things. So you never want to get into a game and feel like I didn't accomplish anything. And so if there are fragments, then you're always gaining fragments, right? So you're never really losing per se. In the same sense, I think that you could do. You could even like we talked about this previously, like throw keys into bounties and throw them into other places, so you have more means of delivery. Like there's so many things you could do.
Yeah, the thing I suggested to you in IM was what if you got occasionally you got Ubers as Rift Guardians and they had a chance to drop the
Great.
key.
That's a great idea.
I mean, because Ubers are so outclassed now as being they're only able to go up to T6, and you go in there with a powerful character and it's just laughable, right? But if you got Ubers that were scaled up to GR 45 or 50 or 60 or whatever, that would be an awesome fight. I mean, imagine if you were doing. I guess that would be it would kind of ruin your Greater Rift if you get Uber
Oh
Diablo,
God.
and he's like spawning other Ubers, and you're like, I'm at 1337, stop spawning Ubers. So obviously that could be a balance issue, but it would be kind of fun if you could just occasionally get an extra key, thrown in some kind of thing, as opposed to just seeing them as part of the Ubers thing. The one drawback to the whole materials thing, which I love that idea of it, but more stacks of crap in your stash. It's like, oh God, no, Maybe they could put it they could make them like blood shards, they're on the inventory thing, but that's a whole other issue. But once again, we're 5 minutes into some other topic as we said the podcast was ending.
know.
So my favorite, I'll just do my favorite thing in the game now is Nat set. My least favorite thing is the UE set and people who like the UE set. And that's pretty
My
much
favorite
covers it
thing
all.
is Roland's.
Oh, also, have you guys gotten the Cow Rift a bunch in
Yes.
Rifts lately? Because I've gotten 3 this season. I'd never seen one before, so it seems like they definitely
Definitely.
turned that up.
I got it in the PTR before the season started, but I haven't got it yet this season.
I've seen it twice.
Well, I got on to do one quick game like 2 days ago. I had literally like 20 minutes to play, and I was going to do some T6 Rifts. The first one I get is that. I was like, oh God. I've gotten it enough now that I actually exited after I did the Guardian. Like the first couple of times you get it, you have to do all 10 levels because it's like new and different. And after you get it a few times, you're like, oh, F this, I got the
But
Guardian, moving on.
I guess what I wonder about that is it's such a cool rift. It's such a cool concept, and I know that it's a huge EXP bonus, but is
Only at the start, though. After
but is
that, it
there
kind of
anything
tails
else? I
off.
mean, is there any kind of reward for like finishing that grip that's special, and why is there not?
Do you know what the reward is?
Moo.
No.
Moo moo moo.